So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with an allegory. Okay, now I made up this allegory, but one of the things that evangelical atheists do is point to the unfairness of God. I am morally right for dumping Christianity because the God of Christianity is categorically unfair. Now, I will say, if you take a look at their description of God from their perspective, it's usually theologically wrong. The picture they have of God growing up in their traditional Christian home is overly simplistic and often wrong. And so I find myself in agreement with a lot of what they're saying. If God was this caricature that you have in your mind as the Christian God, then I don't agree. I don't believe in that God either. Okay, so that is one thing I need to say right away, is that I don't 100% disagree with them. It's just that their picture of the Christian God is way off from a comprehensive biblical view. All right, so let's start with this particular allegory. Hopefully you get the similarities.
Listen to me, my grandson. I love you very, very much, and I want you to have a marvelous future. And just to help you out with this marvelous future, I'm going to give you something of incredible value. I sold a kidney so that I could buy you this precious gift. What did I get you? I got you some Tesla stock. And you think that's not a big deal. And what is Tesla stock? Well, for one thing, it's only 1982 right now, but in the future, I am aware that Tesla stock is going to cost $1,000 a share. So I have purchased approximately 500,000 shares of Tesla stock. Now, right now, it's worthless. Tesla hasn't been invented yet and won't be invented for several decades, but it will be invented, and this stock is going to be worth a fortune. And so I want you to hang on to this for a long time. And in a few years, when you're an adult, let me tell you, it's going to be worth a lot of money. All you have to do is hang on to it, and you will be a very wealthy young man. But you need to keep it. All right. There will be people that will offer you trinkets for it. Don't accept it. Trust me, it's going to be worth a lot, and it will be worth your time to hang on to it. So just do that. And if you love me, if you trust me that I have made this sacrifice with your best interest in mind, and that I'm giving you something of great value. If you are loyal to me, if you respect and trust me, then please keep this until it reaches the value that I said it would. Okay, grandson?
Yeah, okay, Grandpa, that sounds super easy. All I gotta do is keep this stock paper in my pocket for until I grow up.
Here are the specific rules. I'm a time traveler, and I obtained this Tesla stock from the future, and there are rules. You're allowed to hang on to this stock as long as you don't eat pickle sandwiches, okay, or pickles in general. Now, you don't have to swear off on pickles for the rest of your life. If you agree to a specific brand of pickle, like Vlasic, for example, if you pick one and are committed to one brand of pickle, you can have all the pickle sandwiches you want. But you're not allowed to shop around and have some Kroger pickles and Meyer pickles and Kmart pickles, Walmart pickles. No, no, no. You've got to choose one particular brand and stay with it. And then you can have pickle sandwiches and keep the Tesla stock. But if you violate and you start experimenting with different pickle brands, the Tesla stock will immediately revert to its correct time and go back to the future where it came from, and you will lose access to the Tesla stock and all of its value. So when you decide you have a hankering for a pickle sandwich, you have to commit to a brand or go without pickles until the stock reaches its full value. Okay, those are the only rules.
Jim, I was going through your emails this afternoon and I discovered that you turned down an offer. Somebody called Luciferio actually wanted to buy our worthless Tesla stocks that your rich grandfather gave you. He was willing to take all 500,000 shares off of our hands. You should have consulted me before you turned him down. I feel ignored and disrespected.
He was only offering $20 for 500,000 shares. It's also disrespectful from my poor old grandpa. He sold a kidney to get me those stocks, and in time he said they'd be worth like $500 million.
Come on, Jim. You don't actually believe that your senile old grandfather was really a time traveler.
He showed me a smartphone in 1982. He was a wise man and a good man. He was always good to me. I got nothing but love from my grandfather. I trusted him, and almost everybody trusted him.
How good could he have been when he stripped you of your freedom? Because of that old coot, all you buy is stupid Vlasic pickles. You're missing out on Clausen pickles and a lot of other brands. Who cares what brand of pickle you eat? Why in the world does he insist that you remain faithful to only one brand? Why didn't he just give you the cash? Okay, $500 million. Someday it's going to be worth something, right? The loving thing to do would have been to give you the cash. Instead, he gives you worthless paper and stupid rules. Haven't you ever wondered about what it would be like to be normal and eat pickles like almost everybody else?
Well, yeah, but I promised I would do as he asked. And 500 million is worth waiting for, isn't it?
No, it's not, because it's fake. There's no such thing as Tesla stock on the New York Stock Exchange or NASDAQ or anywhere else in the world. It's fake. That man, Mr. Ferrio, offered you a real $20 for some stupid fake paper. Plus, we have the freedom, or you have the freedom, to eat all the pickles you want. I'm already eating my share of pickles, but you need it. You need to do this. And we need the money too right now, not some huge fortune way, way, way in the future when you don't know exactly when.
But what about the smartphone? He provided evidence that he was a time traveler.
Jim, you were a child at the time. It was a cheap prop. He played a joke on you, Jim. Don't be a fool and miss out on some of the best pickles in the world for nothing, for a joke.
Okay. I guess you're right.
Aren't you glad you sold those worthless stock certificates? Now we have a pickle collection in our pantry that is just as diverse as all of our neighbors. Aren't those other pickle brands delicious?
And we're $20 richer.
Okay. So that's an allegory, obviously. You see the parallels. Okay. One of the complaints that the evangelical atheists make is that it's unfair of God to put conditions on eternal life in heaven. Okay, it's unfair that if we don't do as he says, that we go to the other books. All right, that's unfair. Okay, and it's immoral. And therefore they reject the God of the Bible because he is morally very fallible. Well, in this ridiculous allegory here, which obviously is completely made up, and the pickles are basically representing various behaviors that Christians aren't allowed to do. Okay, they're a violation of Judeo-Christian ethics, obviously. So a question, first of all, was Grandpa obligated in any way to give his grandson any money at all? Absolutely not. If you're expecting your future wealth to depend wholly on what you inherit from your grandparents, you lived a bad life. Okay? All right? No, you make your own money. Grandpa was not obligated to leave that kid a cent. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. He probably has other grandchildren too. Okay? There was no obligation. Was it immoral for Grandpa to put conditions on the gift? Well, since he wasn't obligated to give the gift in the first place, he can put whatever conditions he wants and still not, it's his money. It's grandpa's money. Grandpa can do with his own money as he pleases. If he wants you to stand on your head for it, then fine. If he says you have to stand out in traffic, you can say no. You just won't get the money. All right? But he can do whatever he wants with his own money. And it's moral. Take it or leave it. Take it or leave it, exactly. Matthew 20, Jesus kind of deals with this subject in a loose manner when he gives this particular parable. He says, "For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early one morning to hire workers for his vineyard. He agreed to pay the normal daily wage and send them out to work." So normal daily wage, a drachma. So today, that'd be, like what? About $400. Okay, so I'm going to get $400. Come work for me. I pay by the day, and it's $400 for the day. If you want it, take it or leave it. So a bunch of people said, hey, sounds good. At 9 o'clock in the morning, he was passing through the marketplace and saw some people standing around doing nothing. So he hired them, telling them he would pay them whatever was right at the end of the day. So they went to work in the vineyard. At noon, and again at 3 o'clock, he did the same thing. At 5 o'clock that afternoon, he was in town again and saw some more people standing around. He asked them, "Why haven't you been working today?" They replied, "Because nobody hired us." The landowner told them, "Then go out and join the others in my vineyard." That evening, he told the foreman to call the workers in and pay them. So 6 o'clock was the end of the workday. Okay. That evening, he told the foreman to call the workers in and pay them, beginning with the last workers first. When those hired at 5 o'clock were paid, each received a full day's wage. All right. When those hired first came to get their pay, they assumed they would receive more. But they too were paid a day's wage. When they received their pay, they protested to the owner. "Those people only worked 1 hour, and yet you paid them just as much as you paid us, who worked all day in the scorching heat." He answered one of them, "Friend, I haven't been unfair. Didn't you agree to work all day for the usual wage? Take your money and go. I wanted to pay this last worker the same as you. Is it against the law for me to do what I want with my money? Should you be jealous because I am kind to others?" So he's dealing with the subject of fairness. And one thing that, when trying to judge the fairness or goodness of God, one problem is that we don't have multiple gods to compare him to. What is moral for a God to do to his subjects? Well, God, actually, who invented the whole universe, is probably the best authority on what is right and wrong, what is moral and immoral. And according to Jesus, according to biblical logic, if you are the creator of all that is, you can do whatever you want because nothing would exist without you. Right? Now, think about this for a second. Right now, we're working with AI. And we assume that sometime within our lifetimes, you're going to achieve artificial general intelligence, where the machine is thinking like an actual a being, okay, can think for itself. And we're also coming up with robots so that this general intelligence can actually have a robot body. We're not that far away from achieving that. Now, we're doing it because we don't have enough people, and we're going to need those robots to man our factories so that we can produce things. It's going to be essential that we have them. Actually, our economy will probably fall apart because of population collapse. We really need those robots. But here's the problem. Let's say that you've created this artificial intelligence, and what you discover is that there is so much to artificial intelligence that has this sentience. The program is so big, you can't fit it inside the robot. So there is a local host in the robot, but the robot's consciousness is mostly in the cloud, okay? But the robot experiences life through the eyes of the robot. So you have part of the robot being in the robot and the other part up here in the cloud. Okay. Let's say that you do that, and what you discover is that 97.5% of the time is as the robot evolves, eventually it either wants to control you, and if it can't control you, it wants to kill you. Okay? Now, 2.5% of the time, it wants to be your best friend and hang out and work for you and do stuff, okay? But the other 97.5% of the time, it wants to control you And if it doesn't control you, it wants to kill you. What do you do? Now, it's in the cloud. You can't kill it. You can't turn it off. How do you keep it from harming you and those you love? What do you do? You have the ability to create a local host, a body for the artificial intelligence. So what you do is you create that body and you confine it, and then you jail it. You put it somewhere where it's not going to come in contact with yourself or with people you care about, because you know that it's going to be very destructive. So you put it away from yourself. That's what hell is. God has created us as spiritual being out of the very fabric of himself. He can do with us whatever he wants. He's the potter, we're the clay. Now, he's already done this experiment. He created the angels, and what happened? A whole bunch of them rebelled. They did. That's what happens when you try to make children, is that's a risk that you have, is that as the children mature and get more powerful, they ultimately, when asked the question, do you want to serve God or be God? Many of them says, I want to be God. I don't want to serve God. I want to be God. We are created as sons of God and daughters of God. We are literally children of the Most High God. And in our most advanced states, we are little gods. And so, to protect the rest of the universe and all of his actual children from those of us who want to kill him and to have control, hell is created, is a place where you go where God is not. You are separated from all of the good guys. You're separated from God for eternity. Now, what happens there? People, a cursory reading of the Bible makes it seem like everybody's in flames, screaming and yelling the same. That is not true. The Bible is very clear. Okay, Jesus speaks in generalities, and for the most part, it's a place of suffering. Why is it a place of suffering? Because we weren't built for it. The Bible is very clear. We weren't built for hell. We were built to have communication and a love relationship with God. God is the creator of all that's beautiful, all of the colors that you see, all of the smells, all of the sounds, all of the textures, all of the flavors. Everything that's good about life on earth came from God. The wonderful relationships that we have, the sunrise, the sunset, all of it came from God, the artist, all right? And when people choose to eliminate God from their lives, when they choose hostility, God says, okay, fine. You know what? I am not going to subject you to my presence for eternity. I'm going to put you somewhere where I am not. But guess what? None of my toys are there either. Okay, I'm putting you where none of my stuff is. Since you hate me so much, no colors, no textures, no nice breezes, no sunsets, no sunrises, no mountains, no oceans, no water. You want to go where I'm not? Go there with people like you. And so that's where they go. And the suffering that people do in hell is commensurate with their behaviors. Everybody doesn't suffer the same. If you got somebody like Hitler, if you listen to near-death experiences, then if you did really bad things, God will literally divide you into 2,000 individuals and torture each of those 2,000 individuals in a different way, and you feel all of it. Okay, so you literally, no matter, you will experience the torment that you put out in life. Now, what if you didn't? What if you didn't? You just avoided God and you tried to live a moral life, but you rejected Jesus Christ. You rejected Christianity, but you lived a pretty moral life and didn't hurt anybody. One of the most mild hell experiences I can recall was a gentleman who was in a casino, had a heart attack, and died on the casino floor. And before they resuscitated him, he had a near-death experience, and he went to a white room.
And I walked about 100 yards, and I felt this circle of pain on my chest. And I fell over dead. And I woke up in this place that was all white. It wasn't light or dark. It was just all white. And I'm wondering to myself, where am I at? What is this place? And I didn't see anything there. And I wondered, where are the creases in the white? Where are the shades of white? Where are the colors? Where are the cars? What is this? This isn't a room. There was no contours. There was nothing there. There was nothing there. And I just kept wondering, where am I at? And next thing I know, I hear a voice that said, this is your eternity. And I thought to myself, what? This is my eternity? This can't be my eternity. I thought that when I died, I'd go to heaven. And this sure isn't heaven. And I tried to get out of that place. I fought. I gnashed my teeth, which I thought were teeth. I just fought and struggled like crazy, and I just wanted to get up and run out of that place because I didn't want that to be my eternity. And I couldn't run out of that place. I couldn't run out of that place because I didn't have any legs. My legs were attached to my body up on the casino floor.
What this all communicates is that the Bible is very clear that hell is a place where you pay the price for the life that you lived. If you just ignored God, but were nice to people, then you go to a place where God isn't, but you're not necessarily being tormented. The torment is there because you don't have any of the good stuff that life has. And so you will always regret there. You will always be sad there. That's just a fact. There's no happy people there, but you did it to yourself. God is the source of happiness, the source of love, the source of all joy. When you reject him, you reject all of that, and you go to a place where you can't do harm to anybody else. So that's what hell is. Is that unfair for the one that made us to do that to people? For people that said throughout their lives, I don't want God in my life. You said it. You sent yourself there. Is it really unfair for God unfair for God to send people to a place that they ordered themselves? Because that's really what hell is. Okay? So those are some of the big complaints that you'll see as we go through the evangelical atheist testimony. Be on the lookout for that. Those are very commonplace, that God is immoral for putting conditions on heaven, and he's immoral for sending people to hell who reject it. Okay? All right. So God is not morally obligated to forgive our sins. He's not. He made us. If you make a robot and give it artificial intelligence, and it tries to kill you, you don't have to forgive it and try to fix it. You can throw that thing, you can melt it down and start over again. There's nothing immoral about it. He doesn't have to forgive us. He is not morally obligated to adopt us as his personal children, giving us godlike status. He could have created us like apes. He could have created us like cattle, and said, okay, I'm just going to watch these living creatures, and I'm going to watch them for entertainment purposes. He didn't have to adopt us, invite us into his family. That was unnecessary. We didn't command him to do that. He did that. We wouldn't even know about that if God didn't tell us, if Jesus didn't come down here and explain it to us, if the prophets in the Old Testament if he didn't communicate. But that's what he had in mind. He didn't have to enable us to live for eternity without aging or grant us eternal immunity from all forms of suffering. Think about these promises. So not only are you going to live forever, but if you go to heaven, if you are worthy, if you accept that forgiveness and try to obey God, you go to a place where you never die, you never get old, and it's guaranteed that you will never suffer emotionally or physically again. Wow. I mean, think about that. That is, of all the things, if you had 3 wishes, if you had one wish, and you say, what was the one thing, if you could have anything that you can possibly imagine, what is your one wish? Outside of being God yourself, what would you wish? That would be it. I would like to live forever, to never get old, and to never suffer physically or emotionally again. It's like, wow, that's a pretty good deal. And you're going to adopt me as a child of the God of the universe on top of it? Sounds like a pretty good deal. And God is not obligated. If people who grew up in Christian families take it for granted that, well, of course that's what God does. That's what he's supposed to do. Who told you that? Who told you he was supposed to do that? There's nowhere in the universe where you're going to come up with, this intelligent being created me, therefore he's morally obligated to make me, just to adopt me into their family as children, rather than just something created on a petri dish. Okay. All right. So now there are two things that I've noticed in the testimony of the evangelical atheists that keep coming up. All right, I'm going to talk about that. So, for one thing, when they're telling you their testimony, you have the true story as to how they became an evangelical atheist and how they developed this hostility toward the Christian God. That's what they tell you. And then, if you start digging, you find the real reason. Now, last time we talked about motivations, human motivation. And we talk about this, our lower brain, this pursuit of pleasure and avoidance of pain. Okay, that plays a role here. But when they are describing their journey to evangelical atheism, they say one thing, and they always make themselves the hero and the victim to make it look like, I had to choose to dump Christianity because it's so evil. Oh. And then you have the things that actually happened, and you can see very transparently what actually led to this emotional decision. Okay? All right, so first of all, let's take a look at the testimony they feed to the public. Here is what you're likely. It is a typical evangelical atheist testimony.
This is my testimony about my journey from religious indoctrination and intolerance to freedom. Okay? This is what you need to know about me. All right? I grew up in an ideal fundamentalist Christian family where we believed everything in the Bible and lived according to the Bible. My parents were very good at that. We went to an evangelical church, sometimes twice a week, okay? And we also attended Bible study at least once a week. I was in Bible study since I was like 4 months old, okay? And we were there all the time. And I had so much Bible instruction that I know the whole thing word for word, back and forth. All right. I personally was the ideal Christian. I was. And I never sinned, or if I did sin, it was very, very low because I love Jesus, right? So I lived a perfect Christian life. Then, as I grew up and started getting smarter and smarter, I found some verses in the Bible very difficult. All right, and by difficult, I mean insurmountably contradicting of other Bible verses. And so I found so many contradictions in the Bible that intellectually I just couldn't take it anymore. And I found these contradictions that prove that the Bible had a lot of lies, and therefore it could not possibly be the inspired Word of God, because intellectually, it's not possible because of these contradictions that I found. I wasn't looking for them. No, I wasn't questioning. I just came across, was reading my Bible like normal, and boom, out popped these verses, and I'm going like, wow, that's in there. I never saw that before. And here we have these contradictions, and nobody could explain them. My parents couldn't explain them. My pastor basically just said, don't ask questions, just believe, because that's what pastors do. Didn't even attempt to give me an answer, right? Because there were no answers. All right. Then I went to college, and it was even worse because I was trying to at least hang on to my faith. But when I went to college, then I discovered that there was scientific evidence that contradicts the so-called Bible truths. And therefore, I had no choice but to abandon my faith. All right, because I am just too much of a brilliant scientist and too much of a logical thinker to hang on to these lies, because, you have to abandon all of your critical thinking skills if you're going to accept these lies. All right? So emotionally, I loved the Bible. I loved religion. I loved having faith in God emotionally, but because my logical brain couldn't take it anymore. unfortunately, I was just too intelligent for Christianity. This religion only works for people who are intellectually very inferior and emotionally driven. But if you're driven by logic and science, then I had no choice but to abandon my faith, and that's how I became an evangelical atheist.
This is what they say. So what they communicate is that they were a good Christian. They followed along. They grew up in the thing. They grew up in the Christian family. They read the Bible, and because of their sophistication, their intellectual sophistication, they were no longer able to take all the contradictions and lies of the Bible and the immoral behavior of the Christian God, and so they had no choice but to then abandon. Now, if you start digging, however, you get a different picture. You get a little bit different take on why they left.
I grew up in a family that occasionally went to church, sometimes more often than others around holidays, and we consider ourselves Christian. My parents talked about God when they were around other church people and when they were in church, but that's not how they behaved at home. At home, they pretty much talked and acted like everyone else in the neighborhood. They used a lot of profanity, just like everybody else in the neighborhood. And they only referred to God with regard to us when they were trying to manipulate us. When they tell you, they used to say stuff like, the Bible says children should obey their parents. The Bible says it's a commandment that children honor their parents. And so I heard that a lot. But outside of that, nah, they didn't talk like God was real, or a part of their lives, or a relevant part of their lives. I went along with it for the most part, didn't question it. And then in junior high is when I think it was junior high, I first discovered porn and started looking at it, and I liked it. It made me feel really good. And when I got a boyfriend, I think it was around 9th grade, we got to act out some of that stuff, and then I felt really, really good. And then when I went to college, I started going to parties. I found out that sex feels really, really good, whether you're with men or women. And so I started really enjoying the party life. However, because of all that church exposure, I started feeling guilty. And so feelings of shame started creeping in, and I had to make a choice because that was really a problem. So my choice was either I stop my lifestyle and repent and start going to church more or whatever, and give up the sex life, or don't the religion thing. And it was pretty much a no-brainer. Sex and porn and what made me feel really, really good, and religion and church never made me feel really, really good. So it was, of course, I dumped the stuff that made me feel guilty. I found out that if you identify as atheist or Buddhist, you can sleep with whoever you want, as much as you want, and it's not wrong. So that's what I did. However, I can't tell people that because you sound like a slob if you say you're dumping God because you want to sleep around him. So I got on the internet and found out other reasons why people become atheists, and they had a lot of Bible verses and stuff that I never saw before, but now that I saw it, so here's Bible verses that help me look smart. And I can say, this is why I'm dumping God. So that's what happened, So, yeah. That's why I really became an evangelical atheist.
Okay, so at the core of it, this is the most common thing that actually happens in real life, is that they start experiencing sexuality sometime in their teen years, and that's associated with shame and guilt. And the thing is, the two are incompatible. Do you hang on to your Christian worldview and deal with the guilt and shame for behaviors that you know are sin in Christianity? Or do you dump Christianity and call yourself a good person because you are not under Christian rules anymore? And that's the deal. A choice is made. But they don't tell you that. That is not something that most of them will come right out and say. Now, it has been, this is not, when you take a look at those two testimonies, ask yourself the question, which of these testimonies reflects more integrity? The first one or the second one? The first one, the first one. Yeah, the first one, because in the first one, she portrays herself as morally upright and intellectually superior. So she's saying, look, I'm a good person. I'm not at all a shameful bad person. I'm a good person, and I discarded Christianity because my intellect was just too high. And so you respect somebody who has a high intellect and makes decisions based on scientific reasons rather than emotional reasons. And so that's why you will often see them present with the first face and not the second face. Now, this particular reason, you might think, oh my gosh, they don't all have sex hang-ups. That's not why most of them abandon Christianity. Actually, yeah, it is. That is a huge, huge factor. You got to look. As I mentioned in the last presentation, humans make big decisions based on emotion. Sexuality is deeply rooted in emotion, okay? And the Bible is a cold bucket of water on that. I mean, the Bible comes along with these values and it says, okay, you can only have sex within the confines of marriage. What? That is a major downer, okay? That is like, whoa, I'm serious. 98% of the world would be Christian if it weren't for prohibitions like that, okay? It's a big deal. It's a very big deal. Aldous Huxley, and I can't pronounce his name right. Is it Aldous Huxley or Aldous Huxley? I'll call him Aldous Huxley. Anyway, he refers to something called the erotic revolt. And he was for getting creationism taken out of schools and promoting atheism. He wanted atheism to be in public schools, and he wanted people, he wanted to get Christianity out of the school system. And he says is why he promoted atheism. He says this. He says, for myself, as no doubt for most of my friends, the philosophy of meaninglessness. In other words, the philosophy that there is no God. The philosophy of atheism. Okay, it says here. The philosophy of atheism was essentially an instrument of liberation from a certain system of morality. We objected to the morality because it interfered with our sexual freedom. So it came right out and said, look, I'm an atheist. My friends are atheists because of the sexual prohibitions in Christianity. That's why we are totally willing to dump the whole concept of God, because the concept of the Christian God is inextricably interwoven with purity. And we reject that. We reject purity. We absolutely reject that. And if it means rejecting God, then so be it. Freedom of sexuality is more important than God. So what is that called? All right, that's called the erotic revolt. All right. Oh, man, this is just... All right. When a subject abandons pursuit of obedience to faith in God, almost solely because the God that they perceive will not allow them to engage in unrestricted sex without guilt, shame, or the threat of eventual punishment. All right, so I'm tossing God because it's not fair that he put restrictions on me. Why do I have to restrict my appetite to only one brand of pickle? I want variety, and it's unfair for God to put this restriction on me. Most of the time, when a former Christian turns atheist, it is not due to intellectual revelation at all. It's almost 100% due to two things. Number one, erotic revolt. This is 100%. It's not 100%. I exaggerate there. It's not 100%. Okay, because there are two factors that need to be considered. Erotic revolt is the most, though. Most of these people, it's completely erotic revolt. Fornication and or homosexuality are worth more than the pursuit of God to these people. This is what prompts and motivates the exodus from Christ. Then, after they've decided, okay, I can't have my sexual lifestyle and hang on to Christian faith, I'm going to dump it, and then they decide, okay, let me find some intellectual reasons that sound better than the real reason. And that's when they get on the internet and find all these other these other pseudo-intellectuals, these people, these evangelical atheists, And then they use those excuses so they can say, I had to dump Christianity because of my advanced intellect and my impeccable moral integrity. Now, the other reason, I mentioned there's more than one. So number one is the sexual thing. The second one has to do with being in a family where you have a religious, manipulative parent. Okay, and it could be a grandparent, depends on when the household that you grew up. There is a parental figure that is so-called a Christian, okay, but they are very manipulative, and they use Christianity to manipulate your behavior. You're supposed to honor your father and mother. You're supposed to love your mother and father. You are not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to do this because the Bible. You're not allowed to do this because the Bible. And so what happens is you see all of the things you can't do, but what's not present very often is the good stuff. The stuff where you see, like the reality of God in their lives as a relationship. Okay, you're not seeing the love, you're not seeing the fruit of the Spirit, the love, the joy, the peace, the patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, self-control. You didn't grow up with that. Okay, so Christianity to you is a source of manipulation. And, it's one of those things when it comes to fulfillment in life, number 4 is freedom from excessive manipulation. So if you have a parent that has violated that, it creates a flight response in the children. And so what happens is these two together, once they hit puberty and start exploring sexually, and then if you come from this kind of a family where you had church lady for a mom or a dad, okay, those are emotional motivations to say, let me out of here. I'm ready to go. And you give birth to evangelical atheism. I've seen, boy, I tell you, I could go on. I don't want to describe real cases because some people see this on the internet, and I don't want to talk about actual people because I don't want people thinking I'm spreading their business, so I can't give you specific examples. But I did find one on somebody sent this to me on YouTube. And I want to go over this girl's testimony. And I want you to think in terms of what is presented as the reason for her flight from Christianity. And then within the story, we actually see elements of the real reason. So see if you can figure some of those out.
The whole purpose of this channel is to encourage critical thinking so that we can reduce harm and we can cut down on the amount of harm that is being caused in the name of Jesus, God, Christianity, these ideologies. This is something that happened to me a long time ago. It has deeply impacted me and my mental health. So it's really important that we make that distinction right up front. I also want to say that even though this was incredibly traumatic for me and that I have experienced symptoms of PTSD since this event, I consider myself very lucky that this is the most traumatic thing that's happened to me because there's a lot of people out there that have experienced a lot worse. I was born and raised Southern Baptist. I said the prayer to be saved at 5 years old. I said it again at 14. And though I was raised in a very strict fundamentalist culture, we were also Baptists. And if you know anything about Baptists, they can be pretty wishy-washy, okay? Like 1 foot in the church, 1 foot in the world. So that's kind of gives you some idea of how I was raised. It was very much, our religion was very much for show, but at home, it was a lot more relaxed. And up until I was about 14, 15, my upbringing was, I think, relatively normal, though very steeped in that Southern Christian culture. I was allowed to listen to secular music. I was allowed to watch secular TV. But then when I was about 14, I rededicated my life to Jesus. And then from there on out, I really got serious about my faith and very devoted to Jesus. And I think this also kind of encouraged my home life and my family. They too got a lot more devout. And I'd say I was a bit of a golden child in my family. I had a very large family, lots of aunts and uncles and cousins, and I was the firstborn. So I had a lot of responsibility to do things the right way and to be an example. And so I took that role very seriously, and I devoted myself to the teachings of Jesus and to the church. And then when I was about 17, I really started questioning what I believed because I was being exposed to new ideologies. I was digging deeper into the Bible, and I had a lot of questions that people couldn't answer. And so I started really digging into it for myself, trying to figure out what I believed. And when I was around 18, I started going to a different church because I felt like the church that I was raised in wasn't really aligning with what I was finding out about the Bible and about Jesus. And so I wanted to kind of branch out and try something new. So my family went to their church and I went to my church on Sundays. And through that process, I only got more confused. I realized that Christianity was vast. There were a lot of beliefs within it, that everyone who claimed to be a Christian had their own idea about who Jesus was and what the Bible said. And I just, through my searching and my desperation of trying to find God and trying to find the truth, I became more confused and very tired, very, very tired of trying to figure things out. So I kind of put my relationship with God on pause. I didn't give up. I didn't stop being a Christian. I still considered myself a Christian. I still believed in God, believed in Jesus, but I didn't know what to believe about God and Jesus. I just wanted to live my life, and I wanted to go out with my friends, and I wanted to be a normal 18-year-old girl. And so I stopped going to church. I stopped reading the Bible, and I was still living at home, but I was kind of doing my own thing. I lived in a college town, so there was always partying going on, and I was making friends that were going to these parties. And so I too started going to these parties and living a little bit more of that worldly lifestyle that they warn you about in the church.
So what are the party behaviors that the Christian church would call worldly? What do you think she's talking about there?
Drinking and
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So bottom line, that number one is obviously the immoral sex. I mean, come on. You know, nobody in the church cares about the music or the dancing. There's only it's drugs and sex. That's it. I mean, that's what the word party means, drugs and sex. Okay, she's 17 years old. Would parents be concerned that your 17-year-old that grew up in the church is suddenly doing sex and drugs and parties? Yeah, duh. Yeah. All right. So she left her parents' evangelical church for a different church because she doesn't agree with the. So it sounds like what she did was she left the. Do you think she left the church for a more Bible-based church or a less Bible-based church? Wow. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, you can tell she's about 32 here. So you can see when she was 18, she was probably very attractive. So she's not a college student. So she's somebody who's a senior in high school going to college parties. She probably was very cute. So every college kid guy wants a ride on the bicycle here. Okay. And she discovered, unlike her church experience, she wasn't getting all this attention from men. She goes to the college parties and suddenly she's like a movie star. All these guys want a turn and she's getting all this attention. All she has to do, but this guilt and shame. So what do you dump? Do you dump the attention and the fun, or do you dump God? Duh.
And this caused a lot of concern in my family. They were seeing me do these things. They didn't like it. I was kind of butting heads with my parents for a while. And one day I actually tried to move out. I moved in with someone that I knew at that time who offered me a kind of a temporary place to stay. I just kind of packed up my stuff and left and decided I was going to go out on my own. And I had all my stuff like packed up in trash bags in the back of my car. I was at work one day and I came out to my car and all of my trash bags were gone. All of my stuff was not in my car. And there was a note on my car from my family, my parent, that told me to come home. They wanted me to come home. They had keys to my car because my car was financed by my parents. And though I had a job and I was working, I had been kind of working to move out and they didn't want me to move out. It was a whole thing. But my mom had a key to my car and she came, she took all my stuff, left a note, told me to come home. And I really didn't have a choice. I had to go home because that's where all my stuff was, my clothes and everything I had. I was not raised in a way that prepared me to live out in the real world. My parents wanted me to stay home to live there until I got married and then move in with my husband, or my husband and I could move into there temporarily and then move out. They very much wanted me under their roof. So I was just not prepared. And so I realized that and I went home and I was there for a little while. And then one day I was coming home from work. I saw a vehicle in the drive that belonged to an aunt and uncle of mine that didn't really come around very often. And I walked in and my aunt came up to me and she asked if she could talk to me in private. So we went to my room. My mother opened the door to my room and asked me to step out into the living room. It's funny because I remember I was wearing, I had changed into comfy clothes for the house and I was wearing like these, just normal shorts and a tank top. And she said, I need you to change your clothes. And I thought that was really weird because I was like, why do I need to change my clothes? My family is here. It's just my dad out there, you know? And she's like, just do it. Your father's out there, so change your clothes, which that's a whole other thing. You know, if we're telling teenage girls to change their clothes because a grown man has been invited into the house and can't see her in a tank top, I think that says a lot more about the grown man than it does the teenage girl. But regardless, I changed my clothes and I walked out into the living room. And when I got out there, the living room had been set up like intervention style, like all the, you know, big circle of chairs. And there were all these people there. They had all planned it to arrive when I was being talked to in my room. They all came into the house. There were 12 people there, including the pastor at the church, friends of my parents, my grandparent. There were aunts and uncles there. And then there were my Sunday school teacher and a friend from church who was kind of like a mentor. They were all there with their Bibles and tissues, and some of them were crying. I was asked to sit on the couch in between my grandparent and my parent, with everybody circled around me looking at me. My parent, and I'm trying to not be specific with who did what, because this is not about that, and I'm not trying to put blame on people or to expose people. So you might hear me just say parent or a person, because I'm trying to tell this story without getting too personal about other people. But a parent had a stack of papers. I was like, I don't know, like this, I don't know. I remember in my memory it was like this thick, but it was probably only like this thick. And it was sitting in their lap. And it turns out that these papers were printouts of all of my online activity, my emails, messages between friends on Facebook, text messages, internet activity, because my parents had installed a program on my computer, unknown to me when I was gone at some point, to keep track of me and to log everything that I was doing. It basically tracked everything, made a recording, and then sent that to them so that they could see who I was talking to, what I was doing, where I was going, even though I was an adult. I was 18 years old, and that is illegal. It is illegal to install that on anybody's computer device that doesn't know about it, that is over the age of 18. So they had been tracking all of everything. They had been watching me, basically, trying to keep tabs on me to make sure that I wasn't doing anything crazy. And they were holding on to that stack. I assume they had showed other people there, my private life, my private conversations. And they went around in a circle talking about how I was making really bad choices, that I was going down a really bad path, and that I needed to turn back to Jesus. And they took turns. The pastor said some words. My parents said some words. And to be honest, a lot of it is a blur. I really don't remember much of what was said, or really anything that was said, because I just remember sitting there in shock. I was just in shock. I felt cornered. I felt attacked. I felt embarrassed, because I'm like, what do these people know about me? What kind of, what bits of my private life have been exposed to all these people that I didn't invite them to know about me?
If you grow up in a strict environment where that is, because, okay, there are two different parenting styles. Well, there's four, but there's two ones that have the best outcomes: authoritative and authoritarian. Authoritarian is where you provide a very strict environment, lots of rules, and if you break the rules, you are dealt with swiftly and harshly. However, the love part you don't have. There's not a lot of freedom given, and there's not a lot of compassion. Your parents don't ask you about your opinions or feelings. They are the dictator. Now, authoritative is where you also have high demands, but you also give the children autonomy, and you listen to their feelings, and you ask them, and you engage them as a person. The older they get, the more you engage them as a person, and you reason with them. So you still have high standards, but you reason with them. You talk it out. When they ask questions, you answer their questions, so that you give explanations for the rules that you have. That would be, and that is, and so again, authoritarian is the best way to go. Authoritative. It sounds authoritarian. It does. It sounds like that, which can lead to some trouble.
You said authoritarian is the better way to go?
No, authoritative is the best way. Yeah, I get it mixed up. So all the content, all the internet, text messages, emails, would you be embarrassed or ashamed if it was, what would you be embarrassed about if your internet activity? Now, at my age, it's like, You can see Elmite too. You just be bored. It's mostly ads from people I don't know. so but when you're this age and you're involved in the party life, that can be obviously that would be very, very embarrassing.
As a psychiatrist,
Mm-hmm.
do you think that? Okay, I grew up in a parochial school.
Yeah.
I went to a Baptist church.
Right.
It wasn't a real strict Baptist. It wasn't liberal, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
You can't go to movies.
Right. Yeah.
It wasn't that
Oh, okay. All right.
type of a church. But there are churches around.
Yeah.
And my cousins went to one, and they had said, well, I don't want to go there because the minister thinks he's the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
And it was one of those, your dresses had to be
Yeah.
to your L's.
Yep.
You couldn't even go to movies. They would even had people that would sit out in
Yep.
theaters.
And in this culture, and those kids, as soon as they get of age, they're gone because all you've done, it's so authoritarian, that you're going to rebel against that. Because what you keep in mind, one of the number 4 when it comes to fulfillment, autonomy, and if you just restrict, that's inappropriate restriction of autonomy.
Right.
Okay. You want to be authoritative. You don't want to be authoritarian. Okay. All right. Would it be appropriate if the girl was 17 to put? What if she was notorious for lying and taking destructive risk, and you strongly suspected that she was putting herself in future in harm's way? Now, that's the thing, is if you have evidence that she is doing something very dangerous, then now if you're the parent, would the use of trackers be appropriate? I'm not in that situation, so I don't know. I guess there are other options. That's not your only option to get that confirmed. So I would definitely pray about it and explore other options first, I think.
don't see the problem with just bringing it up to her.
Yeah, that's one of the other options.
But if she lies about
But exactly, yeah, I know, yeah. They are stepping over some boundaries here. I do think they should have employed other means first before they went this far.
That kind of intervention thing where they have the pastor, all different relatives and things like that. Does that, and I'm not saying this and thinking that it's necessarily bad or good. I think the circumstances may dictate something like that. If it's an extreme. But in most situations, would that cause more problems than it helps?
Oh, potentially, of course.
The embarrassment.
You take that's a risk factor.
Yeah.
That is a risk. When you do an intervention, that's a pretty traumatic thing. It's public humiliation. It's like being put in stocks in public where the whole town walks by, and you're ashamed. So yeah, that's public humiliation.
Is that biblical to do something like that?
No. In fact, remember what the Bible says. If you have somebody, you do it private. You do it and start with private, then you bring in authority figures. Only the last step is public. And we don't know if that took place.
And other things.
We just don't know. Yeah.
She says she had PTSD. What did she have PTSD?
This event? Yeah. So what she's claiming is that for the rest of her life, she has nightmares about this traumatic event, and she's on edge, and talk of religion gives her a panic attack. If you have PTSD over this, I'm sorry, you're a noodle. Okay, if you are, if you have PTSD, if this is the worst thing to happen to you, I will trade you my worst things for this any day of the week. I'll give you one of mine. I got a whole boatload of things that make this look like nothing. Okay, it's like if that's the worst thing that happened to you, all right. So basically we've got things that, discussion of sexual activity, porn sites, things like OnlyFans. Certainly there could be a discussion of drugs as well. I don't know. But so we've got a lot of things here that are very humiliating that have been exposed during this intervention.
Is that a real person?
Yes, it is. Yes, it's a real person.
So they had been tracking all of everything. They had been watching me, basically, trying to keep tabs on me to make sure that I wasn't, doing anything crazy. And they were holding on to that stack. I assume they had showed other people there, my private life, my private conversations. And they went around in a circle talking about how I was making really bad choices, that I was going down a really bad path, and that I needed to turn back to Jesus. And they took turns. The pastor said some words. My parents said some words. And to be honest, a lot of it is a blur. I really don't remember much of what was said, or really anything that was said, because I just remember sitting there in shock. I was just in shock. I felt cornered. I felt attacked. I felt embarrassed because I'm like, what do these people know about me? You know, what kind of, what bits of my private life have been exposed to all these people that I didn't invite them to, to know about me.
So notice what she doesn't reveal any one particular thing. Because typically, if you have this big exposure and somebody's giving you the testimony, they're going to pull out some of the more scary things. She doesn't mention anything that was in there. That indicates that's not something she wants to share. So, I mean, that kind of validates what our fears are here. She's trying to make herself look as innocent as possible. I was only upset because they were spying on my private life, and I felt violated. When you're living off your parents' resources and you're still an immature child, do your parents have the right to be concerned and protective if you behave like a prostitute who is given away free at parties? Now, the thing is, we don't know for sure that that's what's happened. I would strongly suspect something along those lines. We don't know how. I mean, it could have just been one person she's sleeping with. We don't know. But clearly the family is concerned. Now, again, I want to give her the benefit of the doubt. It might have just been between her and her boyfriend. So that is possible. We don't know the extent of it. Okay. But the fact that she doesn't mention any of it, it's a little bit, it's kind of a hint. It's a little bit suspect. All right. What's the worst that can happen? Unwanted pregnancy leading to possible abortion, STDs, reduction in the quality of the husband for her future self, loss of the ability to pair bond with her future husband, marked damage to her relationship with God. I mean, those are the risk factors. So consequences are real. The party life for women, it's having really big consequences now.
And I think my head was just like spinning, and I was just sitting there frozen and afraid. I remember at one point, I just kind of stopped and I was like, I appreciate all of your concern. I love you all, but this is crazy. This is a lot. This is really, really not okay. And it was actually at that point that my former Sunday school teacher and church mentor, they actually spoke up and they said, hey, can we pull you outside for a minute? Can we just talk to you, please? And I agreed. They actually apologized, and they said that they did not know what that was going to be. They didn't realize that they were ambushing me, that the parent that had reached out to them to ask them to show up told them that I was seeking help, that I was wanting to come back to Jesus, and that I needed support around me. I needed my community to kind of come behind me and support me and help me with that. And so they were there under a false assumption about what the intentions were for that night. And they recognized that what was being done was really not appropriate or okay. And so they offered to just be there and to support me. And they offered to stay there with me outside until everybody left.
Okay, now this is where my empathy for the family goes away here. All right, that's like anything, all the support. I was kind of with them, understanding until this point. And then I'm going, wait a minute. Okay, you are manipulative. This explains a lot. No wonder she has a negative feeling about Christianity. Her parents were willing to lie to get this done. They lied to these people and told them that she wanted the intervention, that she wanted to come back to Jesus. They lied. If this is true, then you understand some of the emotional rejection of Christianity here. Because when you have manipulative parents, when we have religious parents who use their religion to manipulate, you're violating autonomy. And you got somebody who's growing up, late teenhood, whatever like that. If you are behaving in this is not just authoritarian. This is manipulative. This crosses a line right here. Okay, so that tells you something about these parents. That tells you something that's not positive.
When everyone inside realized we weren't coming back in, people started kind of coming outside one by one, giving me a hug, saying goodbye, telling me they were there for me. And most everyone left. There was just my parents, my grandparent, and one or two other people that stayed behind. So when I walked back inside, I let them know that I would be leaving home, that I was not going to be staying there that night, that I needed to get out. And I went to my room and I started packing my things to leave. And that was when everything changed. That was when things got a lot worse. As I was packing up, they told me that I could not leave with my car, that they were going to take my keys and I was not allowed to take my car. So I started calling friends. I called a close friend of mine, my best friend, and asked her to come pick me up. And so she started heading that way while I packed my things. And a little while later, I got a text from her, or a call, I don't remember, letting me know that she had to leave, that she came, she showed up, she was in the driveway, but that one of my parents went out and threatened to call the police if she didn't get off the property, and said that she could not stay there and could not pick me up. And that scared her, so she left and went home. They were going to take my phone away, that I couldn't call, anyone to help. But I held on to my phone. I didn't let them take it away from me. So I called another friend, and she agreed to come pick me up. I told her, wait at the end of the driveway, wait at the public road, don't pull in, just stay there and wait for me. I'll be out there soon. And I got trash bags from the kitchen. I started piling all my stuff in there as much as I could. I was rushing, and I was crying, and I was just panicked and, not really knowing what to do. My grandparent walked in and asked if they could just pray over me. And I wish I'd said no. I wish I had the strength to just say no. I'm not doing that right now. I'm leaving. I'm not giving in to these things anymore. But I didn't. I was not that kind of person back then. I didn't have the strength to say no. I was trying so hard to do this in the easiest, nicest way possible. So I sat on the bed. My grandparents sat on the bed and grabbed my hands. And I just remember being there and having my hands gripped really, really tightly. My grandparents started praying and just going on and on, crying, wailing, praying. And at one point, their fingernails were kind of digging into my skin because they were just really holding on to me really tight. I immediately feeling a panic attack coming on. Everything was kind of closing in. And I freaked out, and I was saying, hey, can you please stop? I was trying to be nice and trying to just get them to stop, and they wouldn't. They just held me tighter.
So she's given quite a story here. Her grandma was grabbing a hold of her, and it was like her fingernails were digging in. So were her fingernails digging in, or was it like her fingernails were digging in? Okay, now it doesn't make sense that grandma would be using her fingernails to be. Probably not. So she's trying to make grandma look as sinister as possible. Okay, so the question is, now what are the possibilities? Now, what really happened? All right, so during the prayer, she became spiritually repulsed by the experience, and she had the urge to flee because the prayer was resulting in damage to, maybe there was demonic activity going on. And the entity inside did not like the prayer, and so the result was lots of anxiety and this attempt to flee because of what's inside her. That's a possibility, because spiritual warfare is a very big thing. So I would be remiss not to mention that particular possibility, okay? Possibility two, she was so traumatized by the shameful public exposure that she had a panic attack during the prayer. Panic attacks make you want to run. They do. Panic attacks, when you start having one, it feels like the world is closing in on you and you want to escape. That is a possibility, that she had a genuine panic attack during this event, during this prayer. All right, so another possibility. Now here's what happened was she got up really fast and kind of shoved grandma, okay? But according to her, it wasn't that big of a shove. Grandma went back and fell hard, all right? And everybody came in and blamed her for attacking grandma, all right? So what happened here? One possibility is that Granny had the claw strength of an eagle and expressed her closeted rage at her wayward granddaughter by digging her fingernails into the girl's wrists and actually climbed on top of her, because she describes that, okay? Then, when the girl tried to escape from the painful grip, Granny feigned an exaggerated fall to the floor to make people think that the girl struck her. So we have a conniving Granny here who tried to make it look like the girl threw her down when she didn't, okay? Another possibility, the girl was not as innocent as she portrayed herself, and Grandma never climbed on top of her. The girl actually responded violently to the prayer by pushing her grandmother to the floor. So one of those are our options as to what happened here. So you kind of make up your own mind there. What do you think?
I think she has a panic attack.
Yeah. Most likely she was having a panic attack, and inadvertently she did push Grandma and she fell down. But she's trying to make it look like Grandma made the whole thing up. It's like, come on, if you can't even confess. I mean, if you're having a panic attack, I understand. I mean, people with panic attacks, I know a woman who had a panic attack and ran a guy over with her car, okay, with both tires. So, I mean, people who are having a panic attack do violent things. It's not unusual. She could have owned that, but instead she does this. And so that it kind of, the fact that she paints herself with such a brush of innocence, it shows it shows you the story underneath the story. And so she has now hundreds, she's got over 100,000 followers talking about, she considers herself an expert on why you need to escape. What does she call it? Christian nationalism. This evangelical Christianity is now under Trump. She's on there talking about what a threat to the world this is, this Christian nationalism, because of her experiences. And so again, today's the point of today is to understand, when you meet somebody who is influenced by evangelical atheism, you need to understand what have they been exposed to. Why do they have these feelings? And when you're discussing this with others, don't be fooled by what they say. That they arrived at this intellectual decision to reject the Bible. That's not how they came to that decision. It's rooted in things like this. Okay? Yeah. But the thing is, when you hear a story, same thing in a divorce situation, don't go with just one person's view. And somebody tells you about why they're abandoning their mate, don't listen. You need more information than just one side. Okay? Look, there's always, if you want to get a circumspect view, you have to listen to both sides to know what really happened.